Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and this episode we're breaking down the new horror His House just in time for Halloween. The movie is really unique in its concept, and it tackles things like asylum seekers, survivors' guilt, and just how the system in general views mental health. Throughout the film we follow husband and wife refugee couple Bol and Rial who fled to the UK from Sudan. The pair apparently lost their daughter making the journey, but it's later revealed that they actually took the child in order to gain access to a bus that was leaving the warzone. Either way, the vessel they crossed in ended up capsizing, and both Bol and Rial have to deal with the fact that many died in order for them to find a better life. They must make the most of the opportunity they've been given and integrate with the locals, even though they're held back from certain things. Matt Smith plays their caseworker, and he grants them with a new home, but makes it very clear that they have to keep their heads down, not cause any trouble, and settle into it without issue, otherwise they'll be sent back home. Smith's character very much represents how the system can be warm to people, but also how it fails them in several ways. When introducing them to the house, upon realizing how broken certain things are, he says he will send someone around to fix things, but never does. Still, they have this new life, and are told that they must become some of the, in quotes, good ones, or be sent back home. Now, one of the caseworkers at one point mutters that the home the pair have is bigger than his, and it's very clear that the staff believe immigrants should be grateful for whatever they get, even if it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Now, whilst most who made the journey would leap at this chance, things prove to be difficult when the pair discover that the house is haunted by a malevolent spirit known as an apith. This ghost hides in the darkness and torments the pair by watching them through the walls. At one point, Rial recounts the story of an apith who one day latched itself onto a thief. Taking the subtext here, Bol and Rial very much stole their quote-unquote daughter away from her mother and led her to her death, which is clearly why the spirit followed them. The apith is seen almost like a virus, something that will stalk you until you offer something up to it. In the case of Bol, it wants his life, and this should very much be seen as being in exchange for the life that they caused to end in order to make this journey. Now, the apith brings with it several spectres and spirits that clearly represent survivors' guilt. The ghosts that appear in the house also take on the faces of those that died in the voyage, and it's very much hammering home this idea that the pair feel a lot of grief. I think that this is hinted at in the opening of the film when we catch Bol having a nightmare about the journey, and upon waking up he tells his wife that he was dreaming of their wedding day. In reality, he was haunted by what happened to them, and at one point he begins to pull a wire out of the wall, which eventually turns into seaweed. Rial sees kids sitting in cages, and the apith becomes very much a manifestation of them coming to terms with the lives that have been lost in order for the pair to get a new one. Mirroring this, the apith itself is somewhat of an asylum seeker, and it attempts to find a new body in Bol. Now, not only is this a fish out of water story, it's also one about how people handle grief in different ways, and both Bol and Rial have opposing ideologies. Rial hates England, and she's pretty much left on her own for most of the day, tormented by the ghosts in the house and fantasies of home. She's mocked by black British youths, and realises that even people who should perhaps be able to see things from her perspective hate her just as much as the prejudiced white people do. Now, immigration, refugees, and asylum seekers are always a hot topic, and just this week in England there have been several reports surrounding them. It often feels like there's a real lack of empathy towards refugees, and even when a migrant died recently, there were several people on social media making fun of them and saying things like, "Great news, let's hope for more." It really is disgusting to see people acting like this openly, and it's sad how the internet has brought out some of the worst in humanity. Now, I love that the film portrayed just how harrowing it was for people who wanted a better life, and the only thing that separated us from them was that they weren't lucky enough to be born here. I think this is what Rial really struggles with, and the stigma that is attached to asylum seekers, coupled with the house, just makes her want to return home. She holds onto dolls and a necklace that are symbols of home, and clearly refuses to let go. Bol burns these as he believes that they've been mocked, but clearly Rial is stubborn about moving on, and even takes one of the totems back. Juxtaposing this, Bol will do whatever he can to integrate. He sings football chants about Peter Crouch, gets friendly with the locals, and at one point even goes to a clothes shop and buys the same things that he sees in a picture of what he deems as the typical British man. However, he isn't really accepted, and in the background we can see as one of the security guards stalk him, likely spurred on by his own personal prejudices. It's a much needed conversation to have, but the film doesn't beat you over the head with it, it's simply there as a part of the pair's life. Now as the house gets worse and worse, their mental state does too. I very much viewed its decaying and the ghosts starting to come in more and more as a symbol of how their mental health was starting to slip. Rial spends her days in fantasies remembering her home, and Bol sees more and more demons lurking in the shadows. He attempts to get them a new home, but because of the dangers that seeming crazy would cause, he acts really weird, which in turn causes more issues. I love how the danger in the film not only comes from the house itself, but also the position that they are in socially, and the movie does a great job of providing tension at every turn. Now in the climax, we indeed discover that they took someone's daughter away from their mother, and the apith promises that if Bol takes his own life, that the child will be returned to them. The spirit too goes to Rial and tries to get her to kill him, as we learn that the spectre is powerless to do anything itself, and instead it must use others to get what it wants. The pair wrestle back and forth over whether they should give Bol to the creature, and he eventually cuts himself so that it can climb into him. It bursts out the floor and grabs him as Rial leaves. However, she comes back and kills the apith before it can take over his body. Now this is very much a union between the pair, and throughout the film we've watched as they've pretty much been apart from one another in the way they've processed their new life. However, this coming together shows that they can handle it if they work as a couple. Rial says goodbye to what she wants, and she leaves not only the child, but also the visions of Sudan, and says that she's going home. The use of the word home is very important here, as at no point has she referred to Britain as her home, but clearly she's accepted this new life and now wants to make something of it with Bol. After the apith dies, we see as Mark, their caseworker, comes to their home with some investigators to look over the property. The walls have been repaired, Rial and Bol are together, and Mark says they seem well. This is the first time that he's really noted this, and Rial says that she has plans to paint the room, which shows that she's now fully willing to make a life there. Bol says that he still sees the ghosts, and that it was only when he let them in and accepted the guilt that he was able to face himself. It's a really touching moment that shows both he and Rial have accepted that the past will never go away, but they have accepted it in some form and are ready to do the best they can. They've patched up the walls, covered up the hole in the floor, and stand as a testament to those that have died. They see the spirits around them, and we know that though they will live with them forever, they have at least moved on from the survivor's guilt that plagued them and are ready to start something new. Now before we get into the review, I just want to remind you that if you haven't subscribed to us yet, then now's the perfect time to do it, as we do in-depth breakdowns on all the latest movies and TV shows. We've got a lot of things coming up, and you definitely don't want to miss it, so yeah, appreciate you doing it. Anyway, that's the main plot of the film and what I took from it, but what did I think of the movie overall? Well, I have to say that I really enjoyed His House, and after finishing it, it feels like one of the best, if not the best horror of the year. It took me a while to remember that The Invisible Man came out early 2020, but in my opinion it's very close between the two. Refugees are often dehumanized, and I think that this does a brilliant job of actually painting out a side to them that we never really see. The media often cover their struggles, but we never hear from the people themselves, and this is a much needed film, especially with all that's going on. It's excellently acted, easy to follow, but also very deep in its subtext and double meaning. I absolutely love unique horrors like this, and films set in England instantly make them more endearing to me. This is a movie about love, loss, and also grief, and it handles every element of it really well without being too on the nose or over the top. It's scary, but it also has a heart to it, and getting attached to these characters and their plea was easy, which is a testament to their performances. The movie does so much with so little, and it's very difficult to fault really in any way. His House was excellent, and it gets an 8.5 out of 10. Now obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on the movie, and what you took from its ending. Make sure you comment below and let me know, and if you enjoyed this video then check out our breakdown of this weekend's other big release, The Mandalorian, which is going to be linked at the end. If you want to support the channel and get to see content early, then please consider clicking the join button below. You can also come chat to us on our Discord server, linked in the description, or Heavy Spoilers on Twitter. Thanks for making it until the end of the video. You've been the best. I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.